The Nevada sun was setting when Mike Thompson heard the strange noise above his repair shop. At first, he thought it was another military jet from the nearby base. They always tested weird stuff in this part of the desert. But this sound was different. It had a high-pitched whine that made his teeth hurt and his coffee cup rattle on the workbench. Mike stepped out of his garage, wiping his greasy hands on an old rag. 20 years of fixing everything from race cars to farming equipment hadn't prepared him for what he saw next. A ship about the size of a small bus was wobbling in the air above his shop. It definitely wasn't from Earth. The metal surface had a strange, shifting color like oil on water, and blue light pulsed from what he guessed were its engines. "Well, that's a first," Mike muttered, watching as the ship descended awkwardly. It reminded him of when someone brought in a car with a bad transmission. All jerky movements and unstable power. The ship landed in the empty lot behind his shop, kicking up a cloud of desert dust. For a few minutes, nothing happened. Mike stood his ground, one hand in his pocket where he kept his old wrench. He might be curious, but he wasn't stupid. Then, with a hiss of escaping air, a door opened in the side of the ship. The aliens that stepped out looked almost like tall, thin humans, except their skin had a slight bluish tinge and their eyes were too large. The first one wore what seemed to be a uniform with shiny badges. "This is Captain Dex of the scout ship Luminous," the uniformed alien announced in perfect English. "We require immediate assistance with our propulsion system." Mike raised an eyebrow. "Well, you're in luck. This is a repair shop." "A repair shop." Another alien stepped forward, this one wearing what looked like overalls covered in strange stains. "We need a quantum drive specialist, not some primitive vehicle mechanic." Mike couldn't help but smile. He'd heard that tone before, usually from rich kids who thought their fancy imported sports cars were too good for a small-town mechanic. "Tell you what," Mike said, walking closer to the ship. "Why don't you show me what's wrong? Been fixing engines for longer than I care to count. Might surprise you, I know." Captain Dex and the engineer, who introduced himself as Blue, exchanged looks. Mike could read their expressions clear as day. They thought they were wasting their time. "Our quantum drive's efficiency has dropped by 60%, Blue explained, probably hoping the technical terms would confuse Mike. "The particle acceleration chamber is showing signs of degraded quantum coherence. And the—" "Let me guess," Mike interrupted. "You're getting power surges followed by drops, systems running hot, and you're burning through fuel like crazy." The alien stared at him in surprise. "How did you know that?" Blue asked. Mike shrugged. "Sounds like fuel delivery problems to me. Had a similar issue last week with a modified race car. Different technology, same principles." He walked around the ship, his experienced eyes taking in details that others might miss. "See these power conduits here? They're arranged just like a fuel injection system. Bet you're getting bottlenecks in the flow." Captain Dex stepped closer, suddenly interested. "You can understand our technology." "Engineering is engineering," Mike said simply. "Whether you're pushing fuel or quantum particles, you still need smooth flow and proper timing." He pointed to a section of the hull where the strange metal looked slightly discolored. "That heat pattern tells me everything I need to know. Your drive's running rich, pumping in more power than it can handle efficiently." Blue's large eyes widened even further. "That's exactly right. But how can a human mechanic possibly help with quantum technology?" Mike walked back to his garage and returned with his diagnostic tablet. "Let me show you something. I modified this to work with any engine system. Might not understand all your quantum stuff, but I know engines, and from what I'm seeing." He held up the tablet, which was displaying a complex wave pattern. "Your quantum drive isn't all that different from a turbocharged engine, just running on a different kind of fuel." For the first time since they landed, the aliens looked at Mike with something other than dismissal in their eyes. It was the beginning of respect, and the start of an adventure that would change both human and alien engineering forever. Inside the alien ship, Mike Thompson felt like a kid in a candy store. The engine room was filled with pulsing blue lights and humming machinery that made his mechanic's heart skip a beat. But Blue, the alien engineer, kept watching him as if he expected Mike to break something just by looking at it. "Please don't touch anything without permission," Blue said for the third time. "This technology is beyond your understanding." Mike nodded politely, but his eyes were fixed on the quantum drive. It was beautiful, a cylinder of shifting metals and dancing lights that reminded him of the northern lights he'd seen once in Alaska. But more importantly, he could see the problem plain as day. "Your power flow is all wrong," Mike said, pointing to a series of tubes filled with glowing liquid. "Look at the pulse pattern. It's just like a clogged fuel injector." Blue made a sound that might have been a snort. "This is a quantum drive, not one of your primitive combustion engines." "Primitive, huh?" Mike pulled out his tablet and held it near the drive. "See these waves? They're exactly like the pressure waves I see in high-performance engines. You're getting feedback loops in your power delivery." Captain Dex, who had been quietly observing from the doorway, moved closer. "Explain." Mike grabbed a piece of paper from his pocket and drew two diagrams side by side. "This is how a turbocharged engine works," he said, drawing the first diagram. "Air and fuel mix, compress, explode, and the exhaust helps power the next cycle. Now look at your quantum drive." He drew the second diagram. "Your quantum particles flow through these chambers, combine, release energy, and the excess feeds back into the system. It's the same basic principle, just at a quantum level." Blue leaned over the diagrams, his large eyes blinking rapidly. That's a surprisingly accurate simplification. And just like in a turbo engine, if your flow timing is off, you lose power and efficiency," Mike continued. He walked around the drive, gesturing at different components. "These conduits here are like fuel lines. They're letting too much through too quickly. And these stabilizers, they're like waste gates on a turbo, but they're not opening at the right intervals." "Can you fix it?" Captain Dex asked, ignoring Blue's startled look. Mike grinned. "Better than that. I can improve it." He pulled out his diagnostic tools and laid them on a nearby workbench. "I've been modifying racing engines for 20 years. The principles are the same. It's all about flow, timing, and balance." For the next hour, Mike worked alongside Blue, explaining each step as he went. He showed how his racing diagnostics could be adapted to read the quantum flow patterns. Blue's initial skepticism slowly turned to curiosity as Mike pointed out similarities between Earth engines and alien technology. "Here's your biggest problem," Mike said, pointing to a holographic display of the drive's power curve. "You're getting power spikes followed by drops. In a race car, that's like having a turbo that can't spool up smoothly. Wastes fuel and kills performance. How would you fix it in one of your engines?" Blue asked, speaking without condescension for the first time. Mike smiled. This was the breakthrough he'd been waiting for. "Well, in a turbo system, we'd adjust the wastegate timing and modify the fuel mapping. For your quantum drive," he grabbed his tablet and started sketching a new design. "If we recalibrate these particle accelerators and add a feedback loop here, we could smooth out the power delivery." Blue studied the sketch, his expression changing from doubt to surprise to excitement. This could actually work. But we'd need to modify the containment field parameters." "Now you're thinking like a mechanic," Mike said, clapping Blue on the shoulder. The alien engineer stiffened for a moment, then relaxed. "Let's get to work. First, we'll need to map out the current power flow, just like doing a dyno run on a race car." As they began setting up the diagnostic equipment, Captain Dex watched from the doorway with growing interest. Something unprecedented was happening in his ship's engine room. A human mechanic and an alien engineer were starting to speak the same language. The universal language of engineering. The desert night had fallen outside Mike's garage, but inside the alien ship, things were heating up, literally. Blue and Mike stood before the quantum drive, which now had several of Mike's modified sensors attached to it. The holographic display showed streams of data that would have looked like nonsense to most humans, but to Mike, it was just another engine reading. "Okay, let's try this again," Mike said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "We'll start at 20% power, just like warming up a race engine." Blue nodded, his earlier skepticism replaced by cautious curiosity. "Running diagnostic sequence now." The quantum drive hummed to life, its blue glow pulsing gently. Mike watched his tablet, which displayed a simplified version of the power flow. "See that stuttering?" He pointed to an uneven line on the screen. "That's your problem right there, just like a turbo with lag." Captain Dex had brought in the rest of the crew to watch. They stood at a safe distance, whispering among themselves as the human mechanic worked on their precious drive. "Now watch this," Mike said, reaching for a device he cobbled together from spare parts. It looked like a cross between a fuel pressure regulator and something from a sci-fi movie. "This little beauty will smooth out your particle flow, just like a boost controller smooths out turbo pressure." "You built that from Earth parts?" one of the crew members asked in disbelief. Mike grinned. "Most of it. Blue helped me adapt some of your quantum stabilizers. The principles are the same. It's all about controlling flow and pressure, or in your case, quantum particle density." He connected the device to one of the drive's intake manifolds. "Blue, take it up to 30% power, nice and easy." The drive's hum deepened, and the blue glow intensified. The crew held their breath, but Mike kept his eyes on the readings. The power curve was already smoother than before. "Look at that," he said proudly. "Power delivery is evening out. We're getting better particle coherence, just like getting better fuel atomization in an engine." Blue's large eyes were fixed on his own displays. "Efficiency is up by 15% already. But how? This is impossible with such simple modifications." Mike shook his head. "Not simple. Basic. Sometimes the best solutions are the ones that have worked for years. In racing, we learned that fancy technology isn't always better than good old-fashioned engineering principles." He walked around the drive, making small adjustments. "Think of it like this. Your quantum particles are like fuel droplets. They need to be the right size, moving at the right speed, in the right direction. We used to think the same way about fuel injection, that more pressure was always better. But it's not about brute force. It's about timing and control." The drive's pitch changed, becoming deeper and more stable. The pulsing blue light steadied into a constant glow. "Now," Mike said, his eyes gleaming with excitement, "let's try something really interesting." He pulled out another device, this one looking more alien than human. "Blue helped me understand how your particle accelerators work. Turns out they're not so different from turbochargers. They both compress and accelerate flow. So I thought, what if we combine the best of both worlds?" Captain Dex stepped forward. "What exactly are you proposing?" "A quantum turbocharger," Mike said simply. "We take the exhaust energy from your drive, the quantum particles that have already released their energy, and use it to boost the acceleration of new particles, just like a turbo uses exhaust gases to compress incoming air." The entire crew stared at him in silence. Then Blue spoke up, his voice excited. That could work. The mathematical principles support it, but no one has ever tried such a thing." Mike started connecting his hybrid device to the drive. "Well, there's a first time for everything. In my experience, the best innovations come from combining tried and true methods with new technology." He looked up at the gathered aliens, ready to make some history. The drive hummed louder, its blue glow taking on a new intensity. Mike's tablet showed power levels climbing steadily, more smoothly than ever before. Human ingenuity was about to change alien technology forever, one engine modification at a time. Dawn was breaking over the Nevada desert when Mike stepped back to admire his work. The quantum drive now looked like a fascinating mix of alien technology and Earth engineering. Shining pipes wrapped around glowing quantum chambers, and custom-made gauges monitored both traditional pressure readings and particle density levels. It's either genius or madness, Blue said, running his long fingers over the new modifications. Possibly both. Mike chuckled as he adjusted a valve he'd adapted from a high-performance turbo system. That's what they said when I first started modifying racing engines. Sometimes the craziest ideas work the best. The rest of the alien crew had been taking shifts to watch them work through the night. Captain Dex walked in, looking both tired and curious. "Are you ready to test it?" "Almost," Mike said, connecting his tablet to the hybrid system. "But first, let me explain what we've done. It's important everyone understands how this works, and what could go wrong." He pointed to different parts of the modified drive. "We've basically created a two-stage system. The first stage is your original quantum drive, but with better flow control. The second stage..." He patted the new pipes proudly. "That's where Earth engineering comes in. Using waste energy to boost power," Blue added, surprising everyone with his enthusiasm. "Just like your turbocharged engines." Mike nodded. "Exactly. Instead of letting the spent quantum particles dissipate, we're using their remaining energy to accelerate the new particles. It's the same principle that made turbocharging revolutionary in racing." One of the crew members raised a hand. "But isn't it dangerous to modify quantum technology with primitive components?" "Every part has been carefully adapted," Mike explained patiently. "Blue helped me understand your safety protocols, and I showed him how Earth engines handle extreme pressure and heat. We've combined the best of both worlds." He walked over to his workbench and picked up what looked like a normal boost controller. "This device might look simple, but it's been modified with your quantum sensors. It'll prevent particle overflow, just like a boost controller prevents too much turbo pressure." Captain Dex leaned in closer. "And you're certain this will work?" "In theory, absolutely. In practice," Mike shrugged. "That's why we test. Just like any new engine build, we'll start slow and work our way up." Blue moved to his control panel. "All safety systems are ready. Quantum containment fields are at maximum strength." Mike took a deep breath. "Okay, let's do this right. Start at 10% power, just like braking in a new engine." The quantum drive hummed to life. The new pipes began to glow with a soft blue light as quantum particles flowed through them. Mike's gauges showed steady readings. "Looking good," he said, watching his tablet. "Power curve is smooth. Blue, take it up to 20%. The hum deepened and the glow intensified. The crew watched in fascination as both alien and Earth gauges showed increasing power levels. "Efficiency is up 50% from original readings," Blue announced, his voice excited. "The quantum particle acceleration it's perfectly stable." Mike grinned. "That's because we're not forcing it. The system is finding its own balance, just like a well-tuned engine." He pointed to a display showing the power flow. "See how the spent particles feed back into the acceleration chamber? It's a perfect cycle." Captain Dex stared at the readings. "This goes against everything we were taught about quantum drive design. We always focused on raw power, never thinking to recycle the energy this way." "Sometimes the old ways are the best ways," Mike said, adjusting a valve slightly. "And sometimes they just need a fresh perspective to make them even better." The modified drive continued to run smoothly, its combined human and alien technology working in perfect harmony. As the sun rose over the desert, it cast a golden light through the ship's windows, symbolically highlighting how two very different approaches to engineering had come together to create something entirely new. The morning sun beat down on the alien ship as Mike and Blue prepared for their biggest test yet. The modified quantum drive had been running perfectly at low power, but now it was time to see what it could really do. "All right, everyone," Mike announced to the gathered crew. "We're going to try 75% power. This is where we'll see if our quantum turbocharger really works." Blue looked nervous but excited. "All safety systems are triple-checked. Quantum containment fields at maximum strength. Just like pushing a race car to its limits," Mike said, his hands moving confidently over the controls. You start slow, listen to the engine, and feel for any problems. Captain Dex watched from his position near the door. "Are you certain about this power level?" "No," Mike answered honestly. "But that's why we prepare for everything. I've added emergency shoot-offs at every crucial point. If anything goes wrong, the system will shut down automatically." He pointed to his latest modification, a series of warning lights that looked straight out of a racing cockpit. Green means go, yellow means caution, red means shut it down. Simple and effective. The quantum drive's hum had become a deep, powerful throb that Mike could feel in his bones. The blue glow from the quantum turbocharger was so bright it cast shadows on the walls. "Taking it up to 50% first," Blue announced. The drive responded smoothly, power levels climbing steadily on both alien and human gauges. Mike watched his tablet intently. Power curve is still smooth. Particle flow is stable, just like a perfectly tuned turbo system. He nodded to Blue. "Let's go for it. Take it to 75%. The ship's engineer touched the controls, and the quantum drive's pitch rose higher. The new pipes Mike had installed began to pulse with energy. Suddenly, one of the alien gauges spiked into the red zone. Particle density exceeding safe levels. Blue shouted, his hands flying over the controls. But Mike was already moving. "Don't shut it down," he yelled, grabbing his modified boost controller. "It's just like turbo lag. We need to balance the flow." His fingers danced over the controls, adjusting the quantum particle flow just like he would adjust boost pressure in a racing engine. The warning lights flickered between red and yellow. "Trust me," Mike said calmly, despite the tension in the room. "Watch the power curve." The alien crew held their breath as Mike made a series of quick adjustments. Slowly, the warning lights turned green one by one. The quantum drive's sound changed from a dangerous whine to a deep, powerful hum. Blue's eyes widened as he looked at the readings. This is impossible. Power output is 300% above normal specs, but the system is completely stable. Mike grinned. "Not impossible. Just good engineering. The quantum turbocharger is working exactly like a regular turbo, using waste energy to make more power. The trick was finding the right balance." He walked around the drive, checking his gauges with practiced eyes. "See how the particle flow is stabilized. The system is self-regulating now, just like a well-tuned engine at peak performance." Captain Dex stepped forward, staring at the readings in amazement. "In all my years of spaceflight, I've never seen anything like this. Our engineers always said quantum drives couldn't be modified this way." "Sometimes you need to forget what you think you know," Mike said, patting the humming drive. "In racing, we learned that lesson early. The book might say something's impossible, but that just means nobody's figured out how to do it yet." The quantum drive continued to run smoothly at its new power level, the combined human and alien technology working together in perfect harmony. Mike's primitive engineering had not only fixed their problem, but had revolutionized their entire propulsion system. As the crew stared in wonder at their transformed ship, Blue turned to Mike with newfound respect. "I believe," he said slowly, "that we have made history today." "Nah," Mike replied with a smile. "We just did what mechanics have always done. Found a way to make things work better. The fact that it's a quantum drive instead of a V8 doesn't change the basic principles." The next day brought an unexpected surprise to Mike's remote garage. 3 more alien ships had landed in the desert, their crews eager to see the modified quantum drive that everyone was talking about. Apparently, Captain Dex had sent word to their home fleet about the breakthrough. "They don't believe it's possible," Blue explained to Mike as they watched the new ships land. "The Science Council says our power readings must be wrong." Mike wiped his hands on a rag and smiled. "Reminds me of when I first started winning races. Nobody believed a small-town mechanic could build engines that fast either. Guess we'll have to show them." The new arrivals included 2 senior engineers and a member of the Alien Science Council, a tall figure wearing elaborate robes. They walked into the ship with an air of superiority that Mike knew all too well. "This is the human mechanic?" the council member asked, looking down at Mike. "And these are the modifications." He gestured at the quantum drive with its mixture of alien technology and Earth engineering. "Yes, Council Member Val," Captain Dex said proudly. "Mike Thompson has increased our drive efficiency by 300% using principles from Earth engine design." Val shook his head. "Impossible. Human technology is far too primitive to enhance our quantum systems. We will run our own tests." "Be my guest," Mike said cheerfully. "Blue, why don't we show them what this baby can do?" For the next hour, they ran the quantum drive through every test the alien engineers could devise. Mike stood back, letting them work, occasionally exchanging knowing looks with Blue. The drive performed flawlessly, exceeding every specification they tested. "These readings make no sense," one of the senior engineers muttered, checking the results for the third time. "The power output is beyond theoretical limits, but the system remains stable." Mike stepped forward. "Maybe I can explain why it works so well." He pulled out his tablet and brought up a simple diagram. "See, traditional engine design taught us something important. Sometimes less is more. Your quantum drive was working too hard, like an engine running too rich. We just helped it breathe better." He walked around the drive, pointing out key modifications. "These pipes here. They're based on racing headers. They help flow. This control system, adapted from a turbo boost controller. Simple ideas, but they work." "But this defies quantum theory," Val protested, though with less certainty than before. "Theory's great," Mike said, "but practical experience matters too. In racing, we learned that real-world testing beats theoretical limits every time. Your quantum drive just needed someone who wasn't bound by traditional thinking." The council member stared at the power readings, then at the smoothly running drive. Finally, he turned to Captain Dex. "Your report was accurate. This is unprecedented. Would you like to see something really interesting?" Mike asked, grinning. "Blue, let's show them the quantum boost mode." Blue's eyes lit up as he adjusted the controls. The drive's hum deepened, and the blue glow intensified. On the displays, the power levels climbed even higher, while staying perfectly stable. The gathered aliens watched in amazement as their most advanced technology was pushed to new limits by a combination of quantum science and Earth hot-rodding wisdom. Even Val seemed impressed. "Your people," he said slowly to Mike, "may not be as primitive as we thought." "Not primitive," Mike corrected. "Just practical. Sometimes the best solutions aren't about having the most advanced technology. They're about understanding the basics and not being afraid to try new things." As the sun set over the desert, casting long shadows across the gathered alien ships, Mike could see the change in how they looked at him and at human engineering. His quantum turbocharger hadn't just fixed their drive. It had bridged a gap between two civilizations. "So," he said, patting the humming drive, "who wants to learn how to tune one of these things?" 6 months had passed since the first alien ship landed at Mike's garage. Now his remote desert repair shop looked very different. Alongside the usual broken-down cars and hot rods sat 3 alien ships, all waiting for what the aliens now called the Thompson upgrade. Mike stood in his expanded workshop, watching Blue teach a group of young alien engineers. They clustered around a quantum drive mounted on a test stand, a setup that looked remarkably like Mike's old engine dyno. "Remember," Blue was saying, "just like Mike taught us, listen to the drive. The gauges are important, but the sound tells you just as much." Mike smiled. Blue had gone from skeptic to his biggest supporter, and now one of the best teachers of the new hybrid technology. The aliens had even officially named it Thompson Blue Quantum Enhancement, though Mike still called it his quantum turbo system. "Mr. Thompson," a young alien engineer approached him, holding something that looked like a cross between a wrench and a quantum scanner. "Could you check my modification plan? I think I've figured out how to adapt your design for our medical ships." Sure thing, kid. Mike took the tablet, reviewing the designs with practiced ease. These days, reading quantum drive schematics was as natural to him as checking engine timing. Good thinking here, using smaller turbos for finer control. Medical ships need precision more than power. The door chimed, and Captain Dex walked in, though he wore a different uniform now, with more elaborate insignia. Fleet Commander, Mike greeted him with a grin. Didn't expect to see you planetside so soon. The Science Council's latest report was too important to send by transmission, Dex replied, holding up a data pad. Your modifications have been successfully implemented on over 50 ships now. The efficiency gains are revolutionary. Mike nodded modestly. Just doing what mechanics have always done, making things work better. The Council has a proposal for you, Dex continued. They want to establish an engineering academy, a place where human mechanical knowledge can be combined with our quantum technology. They want you to lead it. Mike looked around his shop, at the mix of Earth tools and alien technology, at Blue teaching with grease on his hands, at young engineers learning to trust their instincts as well as their instruments. An academy, huh? He picked up a wrench, one he'd modify to work on both car engines and quantum drives. On one condition, it stays practical. No getting lost in pure theory. Every student spends time getting their hands dirty. I expected nothing less, Dex smiled. The Council already agreed. They've learned that sometimes the best innovations come from the simplest principles. A commotion at the front of the shop drew their attention. A sleek new alien ship had just landed, one of their latest models. Its captain hurried in, looking worried. Mr. Thompson, we've got a problem with our new quantum drive. The power curve is all wrong, and we've got a race to win. Mike raised an eyebrow. A race? Yes. The intergalactic speed trials are next week. We thought your modifications might give us an edge, but something's not quite right. Mike laughed. The more things changed, the more they stayed the same. Whether it was Earth cars or alien ships, racers would always be racers. Well then, he said, grabbing his tools, let's see what we can do. Hey Blue, bring those students over here. Time for a real-world lesson in performance tuning. As Mike walked toward the new ship, surrounded by eager alien engineers, he couldn't help but smile. He'd spent his life making engines better, and now he was doing the same thing for quantum drives. The technology might be different, but the principles and the joy of making things work better stayed the same. The universe, it turned out, was just one big garage, and sometimes all it needed was a good mechanic with the courage to try something new.